Hello. Welcome from the First United Methodist Church in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, where I am standing in front of an empty bulletin board outside the janitor's closet. Why am I here, you may ask? And what's that strange spot on the wall behind me? That is where we had a sign-up sheet posted long enough that all the burlap around it faded, and that retained part of its regular color. We're going to be doing sign-ups differently, and I invite you to take a look. Take a look at our website, which is fumcphoenixville.org. And when you see it there, you'll find that there are sign-ups for many things that are coming up. We have our regular sign-ups that will be there for worship at 8:30 and 10:45 in person every Sunday. We do that so that we can keep an eye on the capacity and make sure everything is done safely. There will be a sign-up there for putting a vase of flowers on the altar each week. And that will be throughout the year of 2021. We're probably just going to have one vase for a while because of the smaller gatherings. There will be sign-ups there for the bell tree, the tree that we have been using for years to keep track of the gift giving for families that need a little bit of help at Christmas time. This year, instead of coming in and taking a bell off a Christmas tree and then bringing the gifts back for distribution, we're inviting people to sign up. And when they sign up and bring the gifts back here, then we will take an ornament from inside and put it outside on a tree to show the whole neighborhood and brighten the season doubly in that way. As Christmas approaches, we are going to be needing people to help set up on Christmas Eve and light a lot of candles and maybe do a little bit of traffic control. Everything's going to be outside. It's going to be wonderful. But we'll have a sign up for that, for people who can help. We're planning a couple drive-through dinners. And as those get closer, there should be sign-ups for that too. It's going to be fun to watch things come and go on there and keep track of things. And it's going to be a little bit like watching the seasons come and go. You know, the leaves appear, they turn green, then they turn brown, then they get removed and a new one takes its place. I may be waxing a little bit too poetic over a sign-up sheet. But you know what? They do change color. And the things that happen do change the world around them. And we invite you to be a part of that. But before we do that, let's take some time and worship together. We have a good model for prayer in the Psalms. And today we share from Psalm 123, which is a prayer for mercy. To you I lift up my eyes, O you who are enthroned in the heavens. As the eyes of servants look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of a maid to the hand of her mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God, until he has mercy upon us. Have mercy upon us, O Lord. Have mercy upon us, for we have had more than enough of contempt. Our soul has had more than its fill of the scorn of those who are at ease, of the contempt of the proud. Take a moment to reflect on those words and ask these questions. In this psalm, are you the one who prays? Or are you someone who is being prayed about? To you I lift up my eyes, O you who are enthroned in the heavens. As the eyes of servants look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of a maid to the hand of her mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God, until he has mercy upon us. Today, we'll be using Eugene Peterson's translation, The Message, of Matthew 25, verses 14 to 30, sometimes called the parable of the three servants, sometimes called the parable of the talents. It's also like a man going off on an extended trip. He called his servants together and delegated responsibilities. To one, he gave $5,000, to another $2,000, to a third $1,000, depending on their abilities. Then he left. Right off, the first servant went to work and doubled his master's investment. The second did the same. But the man with the single $1,000 dug a hole and carefully buried his master's money. After a long absence, the master of those three servants came back and settled up with them. The one given $5,000 showed him how he had doubled his investment. His master commended him. "Good work! You did your job well. From now on, be my partner." The servant with the $2,000 showed how he also had doubled his master's investment. His master commended him. "Good work. You did your job well. From now on, be my partner." The servant given $1,000 said, "Master, I know you have high standards and hate careless ways, that you demand the best and make no allowances for error. I was afraid I might disappoint you, so I found a good hiding place and secured your money. Here it is, safe and sound, down to the last cent. The master was furious. "That's a terrible way to live. It's criminal to live cautiously like that. If you knew I was after the best, why did you do less than the least? The least you could have done would have been to invest the sum with the bankers, where at least I would have gotten a little interest. Take the 1,000 and give it to the one who risked the most, and get rid of this play-it-safe who won't go out on a limb. Throw him into the utter darkness." I want to say a little bit about John Bunyan. John Bunyan is not to be confused with Paul Bunyan. Paul Bunyan was the lumberjack with the big blue ox named Babe. John Bunyan is the writer of A Pilgrim's Progress, which I'm told is one of the great classics of Christian devotional literature. Certainly, the people who say that have every evidence on their side. Since it was published in 1678, more than 300 years ago, it has never, not once, been out of print. And it's been translated into roughly 200 different languages. Ralph Vaughan Williams, the British composer, turned it into an opera in 1951. It's been made into a movie many times. One of those movies was the first one that Liam Neeson ever appeared in. It's been turned into a cartoon over and over. And somewhere I saw a reference to some sort of interactive computer program that's based on A Pilgrim's Progress. So I know that a lot of people admire it. And I often will see quotations from the book, and I will see them and I'll say, wow, yeah, that really makes sense. That is totally on target. But I've never, and I've tried a couple of times, I've never been able actually to read the book. I get a little bit into it and I put it down. I say, this is not for me. And I know the reason. The reason is not a good one. It's because I'm a snob when it comes to literature. And allegory is something that gets on my nerves. I feel like I am being talked down to. And I'm sure the guy was not doing that. But when I read an allegory, I feel like someone is saying something like, oh, look, here's Mr. Pilgrim. Let's help Mr. Pilgrim go on his way from here where he is now over there to the celestial city. Oh, kids, we're going to have to get him through the Slough of Despond. That means the swamp of not caring about anything. And he'll also have to go through Vanity Fair, which is full of people who are really stuck up and have their noses up in the air, which is probably where you would find me when it comes to reading this book. It's embarrassing. But I came upon a poem that I do like. And the poem this past week that I read referred to an incident in John Bunyan's life that does give me admiration for him. He wrote that book while he was in prison. And he was in prison for 12 years because he was a Baptist. And he was a Baptist in England in the 17th century, the 1600s, when everyone was required, at least outwardly, to conform to the forms of worship and to the discipline and doctrine of the Church of England, which the Baptists did not do. And so he was locked up, and he stayed locked up. While he was locked up, he took the leg off one of the stools that was in his jail cell. The stool had 4 legs, and it only requires 3 legs to make a stool that is useful and practical. So he took the extra 4th leg and he turned it into a flute. Before he had been jailed, he had been a tinker, a traveling handyman. And he had all the skills that went with it. And he used them to make music. I could not have done that, even if I had had the ingenuity to see that it could be done, which I don't. But I'm just not that good at making stuff. I can still hear my junior high shop teacher standing over my shoulder and looking down and saying, "Young, what is this?" That stuck with me. But I knew exactly what he meant, and I don't blame him. Some people have some skills, and turning a stool into a flute is not my own skill. There are people that can take $5,000 and overnight turn it into 10. That's not my skill either. There are some people, occasionally, who would be able to do both of those things. And they're very fortunate. But there are also people who have a sense of limitation. And that is something I can understand. And something that I think Jesus recognized too, and was talking about in this parable, the parable of the 3 servants. The master in the parable knew that the 3 servants to whom he entrusted his money did not have equal skill. And that's why he gave them different amounts to manage. But he still did. And here's the thing. He still did trust each of them with something. And 2 of them were confident enough to go out and do what they needed to do. 2 of them were able to go out and double his money by the time he got back. But the third one, he didn't trust the little bit of skill that he had. And if he had actually trusted himself, maybe he would have taken whatever risks the other 2 had to take, because they did have to take some risks in order to make some money for their master, in order to increase what he had put in their hands. And that third servant, if only he had paid attention to the fact that his master had more confidence in him than he had in himself, he would have done a whole lot better. But instead of that, he let his fears and his awareness of his shortcomings overwhelm the whole setup. To be honest, I have a lot of empathy for the way that he probably didn't want to mess things up. On Monday afternoon of this past week, I had a good example of that for myself. Sometime in the maybe 5 or 6 second gap that existed between turning off a call on my cell phone and trying to get out of the car, I realized that the little icon in the bottom that had a phone receiver on it had disappeared. The button that I have to push in order to make a telephone call. And so I ended up standing in a parking lot for about 20 minutes, going over and over the settings, searching everywhere I possibly could. But sure, absolutely sure, that if I pushed the wrong button, whatever was missing would disappear for good, and I would never be able to get all of my contacts back. And I sort of suspected that somehow, somewhere, if I pressed the wrong button or tapped the wrong screen, that the phone itself would initiate a self-destruct procedure and blow up in my hands. I can understand. I suspect you could too. Being a little bit wary about messing things up when you don't know what you're doing. But then I swallowed my pride. And I went to the Verizon store and I knocked on the door, and the clerk who came out very patiently and very kindly took the phone from my hands, and she didn't even roll her eyes. At least, not that I could see. Maybe they were rolling inside, but she didn't roll her eyes. She tapped a couple buttons, and within 3 seconds, seconds, she handed it back to me, and I asked, do you need to keep it or something? She said, no, it's fixed. Yeah, right. She knew what she was doing. I didn't. But boy, am I glad she was there. Well, didn't the master in the parable say to the servant that if you don't know what you're doing, find somebody who does? He told him he could have gone to the bankers if he was scared to try the investment himself, gone to the bankers and given the money to them, and then at least he would have had some kind of interest to return with the money when the master came home again. But instead, no. His real failure, this third servant, wasn't that he didn't double the money. His real failure was that he became so scared of what could have gone wrong that he didn't even try or didn't even ask anyone else for help. He let himself become paralyzed. Success or failure, and how they're measured and what they are, isn't up to us to evaluate, but it's up to the master. And if we're talking about God, which of course this parable is, and if you have any doubt about that, Jesus himself began it by saying he was talking about the kingdom of God. If you're talking about God, you have to admit that the master is able to do a lot with us, even given whatever limitations we have, whatever problems we face, whatever troubles we think are going to knock us out. He still is there to help. And he still asks us to do what we can. And what he does with our efforts may go far beyond our own expectations. In a moment, I'm going to share with you a video clip that I also came across this week. It's of a Spanish woman whose name is Marta Cinta. And at the time that this clip was done, she was in a nursing home in Spain where she was being cared for because she had Alzheimer's. And one of the attendants goes up to her and he put some earphones on her and started playing a little bit of music for her. Music that was familiar to her. Let's go back and take a look at this. Marta Cinta had been the prima ballerina for the New York Ballet in 1967 when that scene from Swan Lake was recorded. And now she wasn't able to move her legs. She wasn't able to move her feet. But her arms, her head, her fingers, they all knew exactly what they were doing. Of the two performances, which, I would ask you, did you find the more moving? Which was more beautiful? Which do you suspect was more pleasing to God? The poem that I mentioned at the start of this sermon was written by Ray Whitney. And she said this: "Make music from unlikely things. A blade of grass, a saucepan lid, and from the leg of a prison stool a flute, as once John Bunyan did. Make pictures from unlikely things. A feather, twig, or Sunday hat, a dust ball underneath a bed, a cola can, a broken bat. Make worship from unlikely things. A howling dog, an infant's tears, a broken loaf, a sip of wine, and stories pierced with ancient fears. Seek Jesus in unlikely things. In sights most strange or sounds most odd, then glory at each glimpse we're given of our unlikely Lord and God. And as you go into the world, know that God will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.